During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln faced criticism because his oldest son wasn't serving in the Union Army. The war began in April 1861, and later that year, Robert Todd Lincoln turned 18 and was able to serve. However, he'd end up spending most of the war attending Harvard University. Not only would newspapers and Lincoln's enemies frown upon this, but his allies did as well. Republican Senator Ira Harris pressed Lincoln's wife Mary, quote, "Why isn't Robert in the Army? He's old enough and strong enough to serve his country. He should have gone to the front some time ago." Mary responded, "I have insisted that he should stay in college a little longer, as I think an educated man can serve his country with more intelligent purpose than an ignoramus." To many, however, it simply sounded like the Lincolns wanted to keep their son out of the war as long as possible. This was somewhat true. Some of the motivation for keeping Robert out of the war was political. According to historian and Robert Todd Lincoln biographer Jason Emerson, the president was afraid his political enemies would use or abuse his soldier's son in a way to cause the president public embarrassment or interfere with his public duties. But there was another reason. Mary was desperately afraid of Robert being killed in combat. By the end of 1862, she had already lost 2 sons to disease and only had Robert and his younger brother Tad left. Mary Todd's seamstress, Elizabeth Keckley, recalled the conflict it created. Quote, "Robert would come home every few months, bringing new joy to the family circle. He was very anxious to quit school and enter the army, but the move was sternly opposed by his mother." In a conversation Keckley recalled, Mary Todd said, "We have lost 1 son, and his loss is as much as I can bear without being called to make another sacrifice." Abraham responded, "But many a poor mother has given up all her sons, and our son is not more dear to us than the sons of other people are to their mothers." Mary replied, "That may be true, but I cannot bear to have Robert exposed to danger. His services are not required in the field, and the sacrifice would be a needless one." Lincoln replied, "The services of every man who loves his country are required in this war. You should take a liberal instead of a selfish view of the question." This caused a rift between Robert and his parents. Since the war started, Robert had wanted to enlist, presumably as a private. Robert would later say, "In those days a man had an unpleasant feeling if he could not take some part in the war." Undoubtedly, this unpleasant feeling was partially caused by newspapers labeling him a coward. By 1865, Robert had graduated from Harvard University and was still insistent on having some military experience before the war's end. His father finally relented, though seeing as the war was coming to an end, the decision was likely much easier. In a letter from Abraham Lincoln to Ulysses S. Grant, signed on January 19, 1865, Lincoln wrote, "Please read and answer this letter as though I was not president, but only a friend. My son, now in his 22nd year, having graduated at Harvard, wishes to see something of the war before it ends. I do not wish to put him in the ranks, nor yet to give him a commission, to which those who have already served long are better entitled and better qualified to hold. Could he, without embarrassment to you or detriment to the service, go into your military family with some nominal rank?" Lincoln then goes on to say he would pay for Robert's furnishings himself. He also said that if the arrangement didn't work, Grant was to say no without the least hesitation. Grant accepted the request. Anxious about his son's well-being, Lincoln telegraphed Grant only a day after his son left Washington to confirm he had safely arrived. Robert was made a captain on Grant's staff. He reported for duty on February 23rd. Colonel Horace Porter later said of Robert that he soon became exceedingly popular. He had inherited many of the genial traits of his father and entered heartily into all the social pastimes at headquarters. He was always ready to perform his share of hard work and never expected to be treated differently from any other officer. The exact details of Robert's involvement in the final days of the war are unknown. However, he was present among Grant's men when Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th. Just days later, his father was assassinated. Robert had traveled to Washington after Lee's surrender, and while he wasn't present when Lincoln was shot, he was one of the many standing at his deathbed. Robert's service in the Army officially ended 2 months later, on June 12th. For more videos on Abraham Lincoln, watch the playlist Abraham Lincoln Facts. To support this channel, consider subscribing and donating to Resyndicated on Patreon. Patreon link in the description below.